What's up, guys? My name is David.
My name is Brandon.
And we are Twooverthinkers.
Now what? I don't remember.
That moment of This is an amazing start.
Yeah, I'm fairly
As you can tell, we are professionals, and this will be a hugely successful podcast.
Yeah, and we have our own little personal audience that is sitting back there of three.
Yeah, we've got a peanut gallery over there. We've got a peanut gallery watching us. It's amazing.
Yeah.
This is just...
we have the three females watching us back.
The three females. Okay. How should we start? How should we start these podcasts?
I think it's already started.
Well, it started now. All right. So let's get into our first topic, which is the question we get a lot whenever we talk about this podcast, because we've been talking about this podcast for, I feel like, a long time. You said it was since this last summer.
I think no, that was when it was first sort of initiated. Okay, we're going to do this, and we just sort of never did.
Yeah.
We ended up talking about it. I want to say maybe even almost a year prior to that. Just because not even us talking about it, more like just friends going, "You should record yourself."
Yeah.
And you sometimes saying, "We should record this. A podcast would be cool." And no,
now
that
we
didn't end
are
up happening. So.
And here we are. It's amazing how life works. But when the moment we actually, at least I seriously thought we are actually going to do this, was this spring. I want to say something in January, February.
Yeah.
And that's when I was like, okay. I was watching listening to some of the Blimey Cow podcast, not the Blimey Cow podcast,
was,
the
InnerTube.
InnerTube, right? And I was like, I can get a mic and we can actually do this, and let's do it. But that was several months ago, and then I was like, okay, we're gonna do it in the summer. And then the summer came along, and various things came up, and the microphone I took a long time getting it, and anyway, different things came up.
Right. And by the way, to everyone, I can actually see the comments through the live stream that we are currently recording. So if you guys have anything to say at all, you can just go ahead and post it in there.
This is an interactive stream.
So, which is nice. I'm going to be saving this to the Facebook page. May not be doing that with future ones,
I just realized
we'll
something
see.
that's a little sad for me.
What?
When I lean in and do this, the people watching
they
can't actually
they
hear
can't
that.
appreciate it,
You won't appreciate this until you listen to the podcast.
But this is like the uncut version. We're not going to have any edits.
This is the uncut version.
We're going to have on this. This will be the actual release that we're recording, and David's.
I don't plan on doing too much editing, but this, whatever form this comes out, this version will not be released till the 13th of July.
Yeah.
I think, did we mention that already? I'm not sure.
Probably. And in our
the
mix
first
up
podcast is July 13th, a Thursday. So all that to say, we've been talking about this for a while, and we've gotten a lot of questions, right?
Yeah, tons of questions.
Tons of questions. I don't know why I left you hanging like that.
You're like, right.
But what I wanted to say is we are going to address the questions that people have asked us, which are, what's our podcast about, and why are we doing it?
Why are we doing it, David? I think
I have no clue.
Most of our conversations actually usually digress into something more, I don't know, deep, I guess? I don't know.
So deep.
Things get, we end up talking about theology, or we end up talking about, death and life and progress and
taxes.
And taxes, yeah, taxes is a thing.
Taxes is a thing.
Yeah.
Put that on a t-shirt. But yeah, so in general, we just had these interesting conversations. We're like, it would be fun just to have a podcast to talk about this more, and just maybe other people would find it interesting, or just for entertainment value mainly. So the first thing I was thinking is this is going to be fun, and it already is fun. So hopefully someone else is having fun along with us. That's kind of my hope for it.
I like the idea of being able to do this. Oh, gosh, my internet is being terrible. I'm sorry. I got no, I can't see what's going on. I like the idea of this just for our friends, because they're able to listen to us and sort of relate to us and in multiple different ways, and then it'll branch out from there and to people that we don't know, and we can people that I hope to actually relate to, just like in the homeschool community, partially in the Christian homeschool community, because we all share different aspects of that, which is another reason I sort of like that, and it's not necessarily common for there to be a lot of content creators that put this sort of stuff out there for that field, that
very
direction.
True, very true.
Besides Blimey Cow and even the InnerTube, but that's mission.
And there are other Christian podcasts for sure, but And I haven't really looked at
There's
what
Christian,
kind of other
there's
podcasts
Christian,
are out there.
yes, that's one thing. But I think there's another level of being able to relate to someone when you're also homeschooled too.
Yeah,
you know,
absolutely.
So,
although a lot of homeschoolers, I wouldn't say most, but many homeschoolers are Christian, which is understandable. And another thing I kind of thought about as we were going along is there are a lot of topics and issues that I have a very shallow grasp of, and this kind of connects to some theology stuff and different things we've been talking about. Where I'm like, I'm kind of like, it's this thing where I'm like, I have a certain bias about this, and I feel like it's this way, but I don't have enough evidence to back up why I feel this way, and I don't know like enough about it, like facts to back up. So like I can tell someone, well, this is how I feel about it, right? But I don't have any context for saying. I have some context, but I have very limited like room to discuss that, because all I can say is like, this is how I feel about it, and I kind of think you're wrong, but I can't tell you why you're wrong because I haven't studied it enough, or not even like saying you're wrong or not. It's just like, why do I think this? Like questioning my own beliefs, like why do I have this certain theological position, like just as an example, and like, have I really thought about this, and having an open mind too is, kind of a goal. I
think a lot of things like that is usually by inheritance from your parents too. I get a lot of that and see a lot of that, and it won't necessarily, you don't necessarily have the information to back it up, but it's, someone you trust does. So that's where I see a lot of that coming from, and I get a lot of that, and me and you on the same page. Yeah, I don't have a ton of information to back up some of my views, and just because I got information from people that I trust. And getting into
like the idea of worldview too is what I'm talking about is not so much worldview, because I feel pretty. I'm sure most of you guys watching know this, but I'm a born again Christian. Brandon's also a born again Christian. We are both saved, and that kind of the fact that we are saved really kind of, what's the word? It directs our worldview, and we're both Reformed theology, Bible-believing Christians. So the Bible really is the bedrock of a lot of our worldview. And so that part of it I'm solid on.
Right.
And I trust. But there are a lot of other things that are more, not like necessarily political, but some of it is political. Some of it is like more esoteric theology, which is not something that I have I would consider it more outside the realm of what's truly important. Like I think a lot of theology is important, but like we had questions about things like predestination and, revelation and stuff. And that stuff is important, and I enjoy talking about it, but I feel at a certain point, salvation and preaching the gospel and what Jesus stressed is more important, if that makes sense. Not sure where I was going with that, but that's how I feel about it.
And just to clarify, we are not homeschooled anymore. We have graduated. That was 2 years ago now. A little over 2 years ago now, because we actually went we went to a friend's graduation recently, and it really sort of puts us back into perspective, where it's like, oh, it's been 2 years. 2 years. And I mean, more so for other friends.
It is odd because I still think of myself as a homeschooler.
I do too.
It's like, so like I meet people and I'm like, oh yeah, so I'm homeschooled at UNLV. And they're like, I don't actually say that, but like that's how I think of it in my mind, and it is a little different for me because I do still live at home. So yeah, talking about our childhood experiences, I was homeschooled all through K through 12, and you were at public school a couple of years, right?
Yeah, a little more than a couple. I was public schooled from early elementary up until
one of them.
I was pulled out of school in early 5th grade. A lot of reason being, I had teachers of which had their very first year teaching, and they were losing homework and were not accepting help from the parents, and my grades were dropping. And then next year the class just became so large. That my grades were continuing to drop, and I could not retake certain tests that needed to be taken, and they weren't allowing me to. So we went to to discuss that with the I don't know, principal, I guess. I don't know.
Head honcho.
I don't know if it was the principal.
Big cheese.
But we had a discussion with him, basically saying if he needs to retake these tests, and she's like, if he can't retake these tests, I'm going to pull him out of school. And she ended up.
And your life was never the same since.
Well, they tried to tell my mom that she couldn't, and she
don't tell Mrs. Roswell that.
She laughed, and we left, and we went and took care of the necessary paperwork to pull me out of school, and I've been homeschooled since, and graduated 2 years ago. So yeah,
sure. So that kind of has a large effect on our thinking and our worldview as well. Like I feel like
I have no clue where I would have ended up had I continued in the public school.
Yeah, I have no like my parents. So I should talk a little about why I was homeschooled, because my dad had kind of an unpleasant experience in school. Mm-hmm. He just had a couple teachers that were mean, that he didn't learn anything from. He didn't like the kids there in general. Mm-hmm. He kind of got bullied at certain points. So he kind of had this notion as soon as he got out of school and like was thinking about starting a family, is that he did not want his kids to go through that ever. Mm-hmm. And so he and mom kind of just came up, and that was around the time, like, you know, in the late 80s, early 90s, when homeschooling was starting to kind of start getting off the ground. They just, because of that, he's like, my kids are never going to be in school. We're going to homeschool them. We can teach them better. And also because of the faith issue as well, because in public school, you know, it can be challenging for young kids in their faith, that can be challenged by the authority figures who, you know, are saying something different from what the parents are saying. And oftentimes in public school, the teachers will try to kind of subvert the authority of parents a lot of the time. So there's just a lot of...
I've always, I don't know, I haven't always. School tends to become a free babysitter for 8 hours a day to have someone else teach your kids. So I don't necessarily see that as the way to go, which is why I'm thankful for my current position. But yeah, my kids won't see the public school at any point in time unless if I can help it.
Now, so. I will say, like, for myself, and you have some experience, but I have never been in a public school. So, like, everything I know about public school is secondhand knowledge. And I have some friends who were homeschooled. Well, I'm thinking of one friend in particular. I think I know some kids who are, you know, homeschooled into high school years, and they were in high school. And she was telling me that she wouldn't homeschool her kids personally, which is interesting. So I think she had a positive experience in high school. Maybe she felt there were things that she was missing out in school that she was missing in homeschooling. And I also know some Christians who feel that you should not, like, I mean, there's a lot of people in general, and this is probably a good time to kind of address some of the negative things. And I feel like, I would hope that we will get into this sort of thing more at another date. Different aspects of homeschooling, different things that people talk about it, but in general, there are definitely some negative aspects to it.
You see,
people have these notions of that we should probably address at some point.
Yeah, you see, I had friends, multiple. I didn't say a lot.
You had multiple friends.
I did not have a lot. I mean, I want to say maybe 2 or 3.
You did not have a lot of friends.
Maybe up to 4 at one point that I would be around for a long, and I was around for a long period of time, and it was usually. With most of them that I knew, a lot of them are acquaintances and others actual friends. As the years went on, after I was pulled out of school, I had seen their views changing in the sense that, like, before, you know, they're young, they didn't really care so much. And then you could slowly see a very, I want to say a very corrupt worldview sort of latching onto them, and they're going in all these different directions where it's like, obviously we don't all go in the same direction, but it seemed like when I say don't all go in the same direction, a majority of them were going in that same sort of bad direction in life, in middle school especially, from what I noticed. And one by one I would lose track of some friends, and
one by one they fell into shadow.
Yeah, one by one I would lose track of friends, and then others would end up doing things or getting involved in things that I did not want to be involved with. And others just, I suppose they were immature and continued being immature as they got older, and it became difficult to be around them anymore. So I suppose in that sense I do have the first-hand sort of view to see what effect especially middle school had on kids, because that's like the most influential part that I've seen with the kids,
Right.
and it just twisted them all up. And then I seen them in high school. Some of them I'd say hello again, and it's just sort of like, oh, hello, and I'd add them on Facebook or something and see the stuff they post, and it's all like it's crude and some of it disgusting. And it's just like, how in the world are you involved with this now? What happened?
And I think part of that is I do know quite a few homeschoolers do the thing where they're homeschooled through middle school, and then the 4 years of high school they do at public school. And I think there could be certain merit to that, because a lot of your worldview is and in addition to that, I do feel like parents have a large responsibility no matter where their kids are, homeschool, public school, whatever. So, in a sense, I think you could. I'm not gonna say that you couldn't public school your kids and they would turn out great. I think that you, as parents, this is still your responsibility, and I think some parents could pull that off. I think it just makes it very challenging for your kids.
That's again, being homeschooled, I think it gives the parents more control, like they should have, I believe, to put a better head on their shoulders to prepare them for what the world has to offer when they get out of school, so
Right.
when they get,
and it's kind of a different view of things, because a lot of people ask the question, what about socialization? And there's a lot of answers to that question, and I'm sure we'll get to many of them, but the first thing that pops into my head is, we're talking about school here. We're not here primarily to make friends, because people say, like, they're not going to know how to interact with the other people.
Yeah,
They're going to be like,
they're like, oh, they're sheltered. They're all sheltered.
Before I get into that, I think there's a grain of truth in that discussion, and I want to get into that, because I feel like that's kind of important. There's a wheat grain of truth in that, but overall, I don't feel like school and social life should necessarily interact. Like, I feel like they should be separate.
Yeah, if they're in school,
to a certain degree.
If they're in school, they should be going for school.
You should be
not
learning.
For friends.
Yeah, exactly.
You go to somewhere else if you're going to be to make friends, because you go to school to learn. You go to a social event to socialize.
And at school, I think those two are mixed to an extent where school becomes less important. And it's more about, and it causes a ton of stress, because you have issues like bullying, you have issues like cliques, and people care more about their hair and their clothes and like what their friends are doing and all that stuff, which is not, I'm not going to say that's necessarily bad. There's social interaction is great, right? And you have sports and stuff like that. But what I'm saying is that all detracts from your education, and that's another main reason, like, my parents homeschooled us, was for the educational purpose, to have a greater, to have a better foundation for education. And it's particularly, I mean, Clark County schools are
especially,
low.
I think this day and age with them pulling, like, the Pledge of Allegiance out and any form of Bible reading or any of that, they have their quiet time. I don't know.
Yeah, not to mention,
I don't think that sort of environment is where they should be around, just because it puts out in their head that there's...
that's a slightly separate issue, but there's also... So we have the education part, but there's also the thing where they're educating stuff that you don't really want your kids being. Like,
right.
The
which
whole
is
thing
why,
with sex education, which can get really bad really fast. Not that's. I mean, in my opinion, that's not the purview of the state at any sense.
The age range for...
People have disagreements on that.
The age range for sex education has slowly gone down and down. And I think that it just recently, for Nevada, just went down also. I had heard that it was... But I'm not going to name an age, because I kind of want to.
So this is kind of an intro. So I really kind of want to get into some of these issues, like, specifically in the future soon. But to suffice to say, there's that sex education, yes. There's the whole thing with the transgendered and the homosexuality stuff, which is pushed really heavily. There's things like, there's just a lot of things that you may or may not disagree with being pushed in the school, and if you don't want that being pushed on your kids, you don't have a whole lot of options. But, so, just in general... Oh! I know what I wanted to talk about, and this connects to it.
Okay.
We first talked about how school should be education-focused. But there is a certain grain of truth in, as homeschoolers, it can be very easy, and this is, I speak from personal experience, it can be easy to be a bit sheltered. And saying sheltered is kind of I feel like that's the wrong
They
word
use
to
it-
use because it has wrong connotations. Like, I don't
Yeah.
mean sheltered in the sense of like where you're like Amish people, like, oh my gosh, they don't know how they have dresses. And
Yeah,
stuff.
they don't.
Not that
they
Amish
don't
are,
have cars.
if Amish are watching,
They have wagons.
you are lovely people.
No,
But the thing is, and I can just talk about my family really quick. I have a brother and 2 sisters, and we're very close. So when growing up, we spent a lot of time together, and we lived together, and we went to school together, and we were very close, and we played with each other. But we didn't have to go outside the home if we didn't really want to like find friends and etc. And we weren't necessarily forced to. So we did have, friends along the way. And in particular, our lifestyle 10 years ago or so, like we kind of did we do a lot of traveling. We did a lot of traveling in general. And some of our friends would move away and stuff. So all this to say, and our church, we were not like super, like when we were very young, we were not like super involved in the church and stuff. Mm-hmm. So all this to say, we definitely didn't have a ton of friends. Like, I'm just being completely honest right now. And I won't say that I personally think we all turned out fine. You may disagree.
He's homeschooled, and he's saying that he's definitely sheltered.
But I will say this, and then I joined the homeschool before you did.
You did,
but
yes.
It was about, I want to say it's about 8 years ago when I moved into this house. We joined the homeschool group that was here. It was very small. But over time, like, we were involved pretty heavily in that. And over time, I got to know a lot of kids, a lot of teenagers my own age. And for myself, I definitely, and I still have this, I still kind of feel I have a certain social awkwardness around me, for sure.
I think everyone sort of does.
Everyone sort of does, but I could tell myself that I got better at it after being in the homeschool group for a while. And I mean, maybe you can even remember when like you first met me. I was probably more awkward than I am now.
I don't necessarily think it was awkward. I think I was intimidated by all of you. So
well, no, I'm talking about myself. I'm talking about if you remember how I was acting, because I think I could have been.
The first thing I remember I remember you pulling out a book about tanks.
Yes.
And sitting down at a table and looking at pictures and explaining different tanks. So no, it was sort of like, okay, wow, he's got a lot going on up here. So
a lot about tanks up there.
It was partially intimidating.
This is off topic, but we should get like a tank, like little. I have a couple minifigures. Anyway, that's off topic.
Well, I could. Well,
actually, I should. I
also
off
topic.
I
could probably do some little 3D props and stuff.
He does 3D printing. By
yes,
the way.
We'll get into that later.
Yes.
That may be a topic. Maybe that's not really a very deep topic, but maybe at some point.
Depends on the print.
Yeah, it does. Right. But you were talking about socialization.
Yes, socialization. So in general, I would say that if you're homeschooled, there is it's a little bit harder. And again, it comes back to the parents have it's a lot more work for the parents for sure, because they have to make an extra effort to get their kids involved in church more, in homeschool groups, because I absolutely love homeschool groups. I think they're fantastic. And I do think not only is it fun and good for your kids, I do think there is a certain truth to the fact that, it's very easy to be very secluded in your own little private. And I mean, do you understand what I'm trying to say here?
I know what you mean. It's the way I look at it when it becomes being sheltered, because they use it as a very, very strong term.
And and could I add something to that? I would say public school is more destructive in what it does than if you are sheltered, because I think you can learn that, and I think being a homeschooler, you are mature enough that you're going to be able to learn that very easily once you get into college, for example. Like for me, people ask me, and this is going to be off topic, but people ask me oh my gosh, was college weird for you? Because you're homeschooled your entire life. And it was actually very normal. Yeah. Because college is not like public school, it's, you get out of it what you want to put into it. You pay them money, and they don't care whether you come to class. They don't care what grades you get. They care to a certain extent. But if you're getting Fs, you're getting Fs. They don't care. And you have to study on your own. And you have to meet people and talk to people on your own. So in that way, I think being sheltered is not it's going to be the worst thing in the world. I think homeschoolers are going to be able to go from their educational springboard and what their parents taught them, even if they were sheltered, they are going to be in a much better place than these kids who were the social butterflies and were in cliques and had all that stress in school. I feel like that's more destructive.
You see, I'm trying to figure out exactly how I would word this, but based along the lines of what you're saying, I think that there's plenty of bad in the world, and you do not have to be involved in it to understand that that's not what you want. There's plenty of things like, oh, they need to experience it, or especially in school where they're involved in these things. And yes, they learn from them. That can be good. Sometimes people have to learn the hard way. Sometimes you make bad choices in life, and I'm talking about like the kids that go in different directions in middle school and just make these bad decisions. Some of them pull out of it, and they had to learn the hard way. Right. But there's
some enter a spiral of destructiveness and they never escape it.
And there's the parents being able to homeschool you can you can step back, you can see the bad and know it's bad and understand the bad and not be involved with it. Again, I say they talk about how strong we're unsocialized. Well, I don't necessarily think that's a bad. No, I'm sorry, unsocialized. Sheltered. Sheltered.
Right.
I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing. You can be sheltered from the bad things.
So yeah, I was talking about shelter as in like the social interaction.
Yeah.
But like you're talking about the negative influences like we have in culture, and like we were talking about the sex education and the various things in school that, and not even that, just like, I mean, Clark County schools are bad, but you have kids like smoking weed or whatever, and getting into drugs and getting into crime. But I mean, there's a lot.
You see,
he got addicted to crime.
I'm not. I don't necessarily.
Shoplifting.
My parents come from California, so some areas of California that I
first mistake.
No, not necessarily, but I have been able to see and I've been told and I've learned by what they've explained to me and told me between the good and the bad, having all of those things that they had been around when they were younger. And even in that, I have seen the influence that has had on their lives in the future. I've seen it. And I sometimes I still do. And you can see, and I see not necessarily exactly what it's like in some of the bad areas, say like by what they've explained to me about some places in California that they've been to, just the shootings and the bad things happening. And in that sense, I'm not so sheltered because I tend to be. I get it from my dad. I'm a pessimist because I always expect the worst in things because he's been around the bad and he's seen the bad. Both of my parents is in bad areas, and I appreciate being sheltered from that, but understanding what it is, and some more so than other homeschoolers that I've seen. And I would even digress into talking about music and things like that, but I'm not going to get into that right now.
Another topic for another day.
I'm talking that just gets into influence of the world.
But going off of influence, when you're a kid, the ages of 0 to, I would say, like 12 to 14 are the most influential. Like, you are almost shaped, in my opinion at least, your personality, I think in many ways is going to be shaped by those years. And maybe even going up to, like, say 18 or 20, but much past that, I don't think your worldview is going to shift much, depending on how much of a I don't know, thinker you are. But just in general, those years are so important for the formation of your character. You don't want that polluted by negative things. And you will have so much of your life in the world, shall we say. Although I don't like using that term because it makes it sound like it's just kind of a weird thing. But the point is, you don't need, how should I say this? Like, you don't need to be in the world when you're in grade school. You don't need to like, oh, if they never learn this stuff, they're going to turn out weird. They can learn that stuff when they're 20 and they're mature and they have a foundation of, their faith and what they've been taught, and what's right and wrong. Once when you're 10, you don't have that feeling of right and wrong. You don't have that foundation. You don't understand your faith very well. So I would say that, yes, it is good to shelter your kids, and as parents, you want to protect your kids from what's destructive. So, yeah, exactly. You want to, as homeschoolers, that's one of the things. You want to shelter your kids from what's destructive, so that when they are out in the world, when they're 20 or 22, or they're going to college, like me, they have that foundation, and they are able to be wise in avoiding that same destructive pattern. Whereas if they're in grade school and they're hanging out with their friends and doing whatever, and they get to high school and they're doing whatever destructive stuff, and then they get to college and they're hanging out with the same people, or they're meeting people that are like-minded. It just is this cycle of destructiveness and some kids will snap out of it because they get to an age and they're mature enough to realize this is not the right path.
A lot of time that I see that is when they end up with a significant other, or they realize I have to get my priorities straight, where it's like, or they end up having a kid or something, and it's like, I can't continue doing this. It's not all about me anymore.
You have to grow up. Right.
So, you see, I had...
But some don't snap out of it,
no,
and some of them
don't.
continue down. You have, in America, we actually have a lot of serious issues with, suicide is huge, which seems crazy if you think about it, because we're the richest, most... this is the best place to live on Earth that has ever been in the history of the world, and we have the leading cause of death for young people is suicide.
Yeah.
You have, pregnancies out of wedlock, abortions which go along with that. You have crime, which is rampant in a lot of cities. So all these things go to say, I think a lot of that has many different reasons for it, but I'm saying there are these destructive things in the world, and school is where you learn them a lot of times. So you see, I
had a discussion with my mom at one point about like I have a certain conviction about the music I've listened to and continue to listen to, and she had told me at one point that the music that I have listened to or grew up with, especially around my dad, my music taste, a lot of it came from my dad, and she says, in that sense, I can understand what the music of the world is about, and I can take that and basically use that for, say, my kids. I know exactly what I don't want them listening to. I know what's out there, and I can use that to my advantage, even though it's all still up here, and it's
right.
It bothers me that it's up here.
So that's going to be a topic.
That will be a topic.
Music is something that we're going to get into, but the idea is the effect that things have on your mind that doesn't necessarily, it's not always even completely conscious, shall we say? It's like a culture.
I've had to take a step back and look at it and say, okay, these sort of things, the type of music that I've listened to, it's in my mind. I take a step back. Okay, God, I can take this and turn it around and understand what is bad. God has given this knowledge to me, even not necessarily great knowledge, but I can use that to know exactly in that field, in that area with music for raising my kids or anything along those lines. I don't want them listening to, which I think can in a sense can be used for raising kids. But anyway, that's something entirely different.
I feel like that kind of covers what we wanted to talk about, though. Is there anything else?
We can pull up. And
let's talk about a little more of our faith and our church experience, because we kind of
got
sidetracked.
We did get sidetracked there
into the socialization.
I have a twitch in my eyes, driving me crazy.
Oh no!
Oh my gosh.
I was wondering why you were doing that, but
I keep doing it. It's like it's throbbing, and I'm just.
It must be when you're thinking hard. I wonder.
It must be. I have a little bit of tension just within me, and it's stress. So. Anyway, let's continue.
Next time, psychology session with Brandon. We discuss the stress in his life. No, I'm just kidding.
Yes, David is my David is my therapist.
How are you feeling? Are you comfortable?
Put that on a T-shirt. David is my therapist.
Oh my goodness.
Anyway.
You don't want me as your therapist, trust me.
Okay, we were going to talk.
Why don't you talk about your church experience and like your journey of faith a little bit, and then I can kind of.
Okay, gosh, let's see. I have to think in years, because I don't remember exactly how many years. I'm just going to be sort of winging it.
It doesn't have to be super in depth. Like,
I want to say. Let's see. I was in the old homeschool group at that time. I could get into that too, because I've been through. We will
definitely get into that at a later date.
I think 3 separate homeschool
so many
groups.
teasers.
I've been through 3 separate homeschool groups before the one that I actually graduated from. But
I have gone through a couple as well, but they were usually like way far away, so I'd go to like one event and it was like a 2-hour drive to get there.
I had early on in homeschooling, when we first started the group things, we had one group that was not a Christian homeschool group. There was
not Christian.
I say that. I guess it works for some people, but there was a lot of kids there that were really immature and would make really bad decisions in certain things. And there was maybe one kid that I really liked in there that was genuinely a nice person that I liked being around. But And then we had my second homeschool group out here that was, I had gone to, I think, maybe 4, maybe 5 years. I don't remember. It had been a long time, and I lost track of time. I go back and I'll ask questions to like my parents, like, how long have I been in that group? And they'll be like, oh, it's like 5 or almost 6 years. I'm probably exaggerating that number a little bit. But I'll be like, really? Wow, I don't remember being in that group for that long. But after a while, we had issues here and there. It was, and I ended up not going to a homeschool group for a period of time, and we went into the one that we graduated from. That was early on. I still think I was fairly young-minded at the time I had entered that. And we went through there for 3 years, maybe 4, maybe more. How long?
3 years.
One of the first times I had shown up at that homeschool group, there was no teenagers. You guys were part of it, but you weren't there.
It was the same. Continue. I'll get my side of the story.
Well, it was your mom was there and said, "Oh, I have a couple of teenagers. They just didn't come because."
And then my mom gets home and she's like, "Oh, there was a teenager at the park today." I was like, "Say what?"
I sat there on my phone, I think, or my iPod or something at the time. Maybe I didn't have it.
A real live teenager.
But apparently, before I had entered the group, there were not many teens or kids. But when I had gotten there, you guys came shortly after, and it slowly began growing. Just shortly after me, we got more people coming in, and it grew, and we were there for, I don't know,
Several
2 or 3 years. I don't remember.
I feel like it was more than that. More like 4, but I don't know.
Well, we've known each other for 4 years. So I feel like graduating...
Don't ask us time. Time is relative.
I say we graduate 2 years ago, so I figure we know each other for 4 years. It's 2 years.
Did we? But I feel like we knew each other longer than that, but I don't know at this point. It's
I have been told by my mom that she had met you guys a long time before that. But we don't remember.
Well, the thing with homeschoolers is there's not like a ton of us. Like there's a good amount.
It's a very small world.
But you kind of feel like you meet people like just in general. Like it's kind of like a mixing pot where you pretty much almost meet every homeschooler that there is. Like, and that's specifically in the Vegas area. It's not like very huge.
Anyway, homeschool group stuff.
Yeah.
What was it? Okay, we knew you guys.
Yes.
And intimidated by you guys because you guys were like so intelligent, and that was the thing. You can ask different.
Okay.
You can ask our friends. You know, I
almost wonder if we should get into this at some other point because
we will have.
I feel like it's not intelligence; it's something else. But
it was a joke.
I think it was awkwardness.
It was awkwardness for you.
Yeah.
Anyway, Stephanie's dying. Oh my gosh. Okay.
I hope not.
Anyway,
hang in there, Steffi.
Now to continue into the conversation of my church background, I had in the there was a Christian group that I was in before the one that we graduated from that had a couple of kids that invited me to their youth group, and I had gone to that youth group. I don't know if I want to name them all off, but I'm just going to say I had gone to that youth group for, I want to say, almost 4 years prior to being.
Now, what church was this, if you mind saying?
Crossroads.
Crossroads, okay.
This was Crossroads. I had gone there for around 4 years. I was not saved at the time.
Okay.
It was only the youth groups that I went to. I never actually went to the church that was there. And they had their worship and things like that they did. They had, in a way, explained and introduced salvation and understanding understanding that. But it wasn't grabbing me. I'm very traditional. I like the anymore now. I like the traditional.
He likes the old things. No, I'm just.
But a lot of the new music and that, and people jumping up and down and yelling and stuff like that, it just was.
Which is another conversation.
It got to the point where I was like, "What is this? This doesn't seem.
What is my life?
This is like extreme to me." I was like, "This is weird to think that this is what God is all about," and it was just. It didn't help me.
Okay.
I moved on and was invited by a different friend, I think. When shortly after entering this group, I tapped on the table. I'm sorry.
Huge mistake.
Anyway, I'm sure it'll be fine.
So professional.
Anyway, shortly after being in this group, I tapped on the table again, but not with my fingernail. I will stop doing that. they had was invited to another church. I believe that was Calvary Chapel, and I had gone through that church. I think it wasn't even a year that I had been in there. A few months. I'm gonna guess and say 6 months, just half a year, just to be safe. And I was actually saved in that church. It wasn't any more traditional than the first one that I had originally gone to, and it was youth groups only that I had gone to in both of these churches. And
let's clarify a little bit. When you're talking about traditional, are you talking mostly about music or theology or
all of it?
All of it. Okay.
If you want me to clarify, I currently attend a traditional Baptist church.
Right. But I would consider Calvary to be pretty traditional in their sense, like similar to Baptist. Or am I wrong? We'd have to get into things like this.
We would have to get into that
point.
Because that's a hard throw.
Right. But music is kind of the most kind of music, and also maybe just the seriousness of
it. Could be, and the youth groups were a little different than the actual church service.
Right.
When you went to the youth groups, music was a little more, I don't know, popular, like pop style music, because they like to appeal to the younger audience. A lot of woes. They like to appeal to the younger audience,
right?
Because these are teenagers. I was a teenager.
Right.
He was just a boy.
I was probably.
Now he's a man.
I'm trying to think. How long ago was that? That wasn't that long ago. I was probably 17.
That was 6 weeks ago.
David. I was probably 17. Maybe almost 18. No, I was... No. I'm going to just leave that out there. I think I was almost 18, maybe.
Okay.
No.
I don't know.
I don't know.
You've been going to Lighthouse. I feel like you've been going to Lighthouse Baptist.
I am so bad with years.
I
am terrible.
I remember you mentioning that and talking about that before we graduated. So it's got to be at least 3 years.
Yes, it has to be.
It's got to be about 3 years.
I'm terrible with years and time.
Yeah.
So,
but it's not important. The people don't need necessarily know the dates. 100%.
Anyway, to backtrack. I was saved in that church. It was something about the message that the pastor there was preaching, and I was extremely convicted, and I had finally sat down and had made a conscious decision and prayed to God to save me. And I remember that night very, very well. I don't remember the day. I know it was late in the day, but I know what the feeling was like. So it was pretty trippy. But I was saved in that church, and I moved on to Lighthouse Baptist, which is a traditional sort of Baptist church. We sing the hymns. We don't do your rock music and things like that. It's piano and choir. That's what we do. And I've been going there for what feels like
several years.
I'm getting a message. What is it? It's 5 years. Okay, probably 5 years. That's pretty. No, I was baptized in that church. So, yeah,
cool.
That's my background, at least up until now.
And we're definitely gonna talk a lot about. I hope we're gonna do some podcasts on different kinds of churches, different theology of different churches, and definitely
that'll require a bit of research.
But also some of the different views and definitely some of the different nuances, and Christian music. We'll definitely talk about Christian music because that's something that I'm curious about as well. Because I think we have probably slightly different. Because I definitely enjoy contemporary Christian more than you do, and like we sent you that list of things, and you like some of them, but some of them you're like,
it was just sort of like.
So
it's hard for me to get into some of that, where it's just sort of like. I have to sit down and think about it for a while to give a good explanation. I'll work on that later, but it's hard for me.
There is a lot of different styles of Christian music too, although a lot of it also sounds the same, which we'll get into.
It's hard to say it. I don't know. I almost feel like for me, it's a respect thing to God when it's like the style of music and or the way we worship. I like the traditional ways because those are the ways that worked. And it was, if it isn't broke, don't fix it sort of thing to me. So I don't see why they need to bring a lot of the styles of the world into a lot of that.
See,
it doesn't
that
seem
gets
right
into
to me.
a very interesting discussion, which I don't know if I want to dive into right now.
Okay,
but it connects.
That was a teaser.
That connects with a lot of different things.
It does,
because like you could argue that the hymns you're singing are from like the early 1900s, which is only like 80 years. So that would be my first response to that.
Mm-hmm. And I'd have to look into that more. Maybe the writers of the music.
But
things
a lot
like
of
that.
a lot of the hymns are older. That's true. And generally speaking, singing and piano is the most traditional way of worshiping. Personally, I would say that the Bible says, "Make a joyful noise unto the Lord," and I would say that contemporary Christian music is making a joyful noise. So, but I can definitely understand how different people could have different opinions of it, and I think I think both are valid. I think whatever is for you is worshiping God. I think that's
let me say this
pleasing
one
to
thing.
Him. But
I think part of my view on this is derived from I grew up in a household where my dad and my mom listened to a lot of I'd say classic rock and things like that, and especially my dad. I grew up with that for as long as I can remember. And you see, when
I love how we're dancing around this topic for like the entire podcast.
You see,
It's coming, guys. The official music podcast is coming.
You see, when I've been around that for so long, and as I've gotten older and become a bit more convicted in the type of music that I'm listening to and what is right in God's eyes, you see, I go into contemporary Christian music and I look at it like this is reminding me of the music that I'm trying to separate from. This is reminding me of the music that is bad.
Yes.
It's pulling me back into that field of I don't want to be here. This is what I separated from, and why does it sound like it, and why is it talking about God in the way that I was trying to get away from? That is me. But some people don't have that. They don't grow up like that.
Right.
Like I did,
and that would definitely be my perspective, because that never would even occur to me necessarily. But I would also say that there are some songs that I don't enjoy at all and I don't like that are contemporary Christian, and some that I really do enjoy and like. And I think there are some that you probably would be able to appreciate.
I can
and
tell
there are
you
definitely
for sure
some
that
very
is
good
some.
ones.
I can tell you for sure.
And there are others that are definitely, to me, seem very shallow, and even the musical style seems very poppy and shallow. And so in general, I think the contemporary Christian entire genre has some issues. That being said, I mean, I'll be honest. I listen to SOS at this point. I listen to SOS pretty much every single day in the car. So,
I can say that I do also, but I'm very picky about what they're playing. If they're playing something I don't like, I usually will change it just about immediately. So it'll be like some songs will be like repeating the same thing over and over and over and over. And I'm just sort of like,
that happens to us, maybe less than you, but definitely sometimes. Like me and Steph were driving the car, and a song would come on, and Steph was just like, "No," or I'm just like, "No, we're not listening to this right now." And then there are some where like, "Yeah, crank it up."
Lauren Daigle is coming on.
I like some of her music.
She's very good.
I do.
She's very good.
Yeah, so, okay.
Or Carrie
there's
Joby, Revelation song. That's a good song. Job? I don't know. The Peanut Gallery.
Timothy says, "It is well with my soul."
Oh, that's a good one. Well, that's Bethel, isn't it? Or is it Hillsong? It's one of the two, isn't it?
Well, it's kind of hard to say because that one was around before.
True. And that's another thing contemporary does, is they take old hymns and kind of do their own spin on it, which for some songs is really cool. It seems a little bit lazy in my opinion, but it's cool at the same time. I guess it's like a facelift to an older hymn. But the older hymns are so good at, like, it as well is such a good hymn by itself.
Yeah, exactly.
But I can understand why adding maybe a little bit instrumentation to it and just kind of singing it in a slightly different way.
I think one of my
cool
main
too.
complaints was too much computer editing and too much electric guitar.
Right.
That was my issue.
Right.
And then you get into the drums, and the drums just seem like a lot. I don't know.
It depends, but, like, that's more like almost a stylistic thing, right, than like an anti-contemporary Christian thing. So we're kind of, I feel like we're moving somewhere here.
Well, we'll talk about that
him.
later. So, okay, your church background.
My church background.
We didn't talk about that.
So yeah, I have had a kind of an all over the place as far as church has been. And this really connects to the fact that, like, the lifestyle that I've lived as a homeschooler and also as traveling a lot. We've never had a really deep church roots. Like we, in Boulder City, there's a small Baptist church we attended for many years. And at certain points, we kind of left that church at a time because of reasons that I won't get into. And then we kind of came back to that church off and on. But at the same time, it was in Boulder City, so we kind of moved to Henderson. So it was kind of inconvenient for us. And for several years, we attended Central Christian, which is kind of like the mega church in Vegas area. And I think Central, let me back up a bit, because I feel like my faith has been far more defined by my parents and our family, like, relationship with God and, like, what my parents have taught me than what I've learned. Like my dad, and this kind of connects to the public school thing, my dad never wanted us kids going to youth groups in church.
I know plenty of families that are like
because
that.
they're like, we don't want it. It's because those kids are off in public school, and it's kind of like the whole, like what we were talking about before with sheltering and all that.
What you're trying to get out of to begin with,
right?
And then you're putting right back in.
And of course, my parents were definitely of the frame of mind that the kids should be in the service. You know, they didn't like the idea of the kids leaving to go to a youth group during the service. And oftentimes, I think churches often have youth groups now that are separate. I think partially for that reason, perhaps.
Depending on the age range, because we have that, but we have different age ranges at my church. I'm speaking too quietly. We have different age ranges at my church that are for the younger kids to go to separately. But
For the children.
a lot of that was mainly for the reason being that there's a lot of things that they cover that the kids don't understand.
That's
So,
true, and kids
but-
will get bored and won't really. So I can see arguments on really both sides of that specifically, and I think in general, if it's a good church, youth group can be very beneficial too. But that's kind of like a separate issue.
I get it, because-
Getting back to like my own story. So all that being said, my faith has really been kind of defined by growing up with my family, and we would do Bible studies, and my parents would talk to us about our faith and have kind of teach us about Jesus and about who God is. And then we attended Central Christian Church for a while, and that church, we kind of went there because it was there, and because we didn't put a ton of effort into searching out other churches very much, to be quite frankly. And also my dad and mom, we kind of have lived in it more of like an independent. My dad is not super fond of a lot of churches that he's gone to for different reasons, which I don't think I'll get into now either. But just in general, Central was a church that we could just go to, and we'd get a entertaining sermon and an interesting sermon. And then my dad hated the music, so it was kind of funny that we went there for so long. Like, he couldn't stand the music. And we'd also do the online church thing, so I'm sure some of the Christians out there are already
Cringing.
Like, who is this guy?
Why
A mega church
Online
and
church?
online church?
But the
cringing
reason
already.
my dad specifically liked the online church is, I mean, A, it's convenient, not gonna lie, and also we'd have like family time of discussion after the service, and we'd skip the music. So we'd have or at least the music would be at a very low volume. My dad's main complaint was the volume of the music. So we'd like have the volume down low, have the worship, then have the sermon, and then after the sermon we'd have a family time of like discussion and prayer and and just community there. All that to say, at a certain point we started getting to the place where we felt like it just wasn't. Central is kind of a shallow church in a lot of ways, and the teaching was definitely, shall we say, not the greatest. And specifically,
if I could say something, when you guys originally told us you went to Central, your mom told my mom,
Yeah.
and our first thought was like, really?
yeah,
No, it
So
was
surprised.
just because you guys don't seem like the type of family that would.
Yes.
Not necessarily that we were surprised, but just surprised because of the type of people
Yeah, and
you
it's
are.
also-
It's just how it seems.
it's interesting even discussing this, because I don't know if I've ever completely put these thoughts together in my own head or even said them out loud necessarily. So this is kind of like new ground almost. And it really comes back to the philosophy of my parents, and like my dad especially feels that the parents it's their responsibility to teach the kids the faith, and it's kind of like their job basically. And in a lot of ways, he never really connected very deeply with any church, and he still really hasn't. So all that to say, eventually we kind of felt like Central was not for us anymore. We never liked the music. Central had a lot of things that
got
just
rid of the
made you
Christian out of
uncomfortable.
their banner.
They took the Christian out of the banner. Although that was after we left, I
I know,
believe.
but I seen that recently.
Yeah, it's just kind of. I think Central is a good. It's not a growth church. It is a good church, and I do think it does good work in the sense of just attracting completely new Christians and people who have never. And I say that. Like, I do believe they do good work. I also believe that it's not the best church to grow and to mature as a Christian. And I'm sure you could even go into arguments about and I personally, having attended Central, I do believe they are firm Bible-believing Christians, and I think there's a lot of good people there, certainly. And I could see why you could have people who would say maybe it's not the most healthy church ever, and I think there's some things they do that aren't great. But anyway, I'm not articulating very well what I'm trying to say about that And like maybe at some point I'll go back and revisit that.
Yeah.
So I don't really want to say any more on that subject because I'm not being clear in even my own head or right now what I'm saying. So we left Central. I don't know how many. Now the years come to haunt me. That must have been
You see how I feel.
3 to 4 years ago. I want to say 5 years. Wait, no, 2 years.
The peanut gallery is giving me
If
advice.
I may have an input, I think it was more recent. I think it was maybe
on the order of 2 to 3
a couple of years now. I think maybe 2 years from when I was told by you guys.
Okay. I want to say 2 to 3, 2.5.
No.
All right.
Am I high or am I low?
You guys are way low.
Give us a number.
It's at least 5.
No.
No.
We don't go to any church for a while. We just like watch online.
I'm going to the Green Valley for certain.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Green Valley for 3 years.
But we didn't.
All right, I'm
stop
sorry.
shopping.
This is gonna sound disjointed.
okay, we'll work on that.
The peanut gallery behind us. The 3 females are giving us advice.
Peanut gallery. Where do you get that?
You said it.
The
the
peanut
start of the
gallery.
show.
I said the 3 females. I'm talking
Oh.
about the peanut gallery thing. What's that?
Well, that's a. I thought you said that. Well, that's a term that used to like in I believe in Congress they'd have. I guess the peanut gallery is people that would eat peanuts and watch the Congress from above, like in a balcony. Basically, like just watching the Congress people at work, that kind of thing. And that's what they're doing. They're watching us podcast. You guys didn't know that, did you? Little bonus feature. For
All right,
you
so
guys.
now you're currently at Green Valley Baptist.
So now we're currently at Green Valley Baptist. My brother especially kind of fell in love with the church, and we all just it's a lot more. It's definitely more traditional.
Mm-hmm.
The music is contemporary, but it's they have a choir. A lot of times they do they have a hymn service at 8:00.
Mm-hmm.
They do have like the guitar and drums, but a lot of times it's definitely not super loud. It's not obnoxious in my opinion.
I've been around them. They seem a bit more in the middle. I
Yeah,
don't want to say
definitely-
they don't completely.
Definitely in the middle.
Yeah.
That's a good way of describing them. And the thing I definitely appreciate about it, and again, I kind of more enjoy that style of music
Mm-hmm.
myself. I do enjoy hymns as well, but I've never actually been to a church that's been all hymns, so I don't really have much. That's off
You see, well, I had gone to Green Valley Baptist, not necessarily for the actual church.
Mm-hmm.
I went for BSF, which was a third party. That was Green Valley Baptist was allowing us to use the building for that. I topped out on that in age, so I couldn't actually continue because there was no men's service to continue in that. But they had a giant auditorium and all
Right.
that. It was huge.
Yes.
But
It's a very large church. It's like 1,000 membership, which is quite a bit smaller than Central, but still 3 services is pretty large.
Yeah.
What I was going to say is Green Valley Baptist kind of attracted us because it's just a more mature environment. The preaching is more direct, more mature. I think you learn more challenging. So it's been a good experience. I guess I should, and I'll also talk about like my personal salvation story, which is something that I haven't really talked about before either much. But and it's kind of again a little odd for me because I grew up as a Christian.
Mhm. You see,
And
I
I
was
could
able to
s-
tie mine in with my church.
Yeah. Well, see, mine wasn't
so-
really connected because kind of the whole disconnected thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't really know exactly when I would say. I do have a moment when I consider myself saved, but for me, it's definitely more blurry
Mm-hmm.
because for me, it was almost a wrestle of am I saved?
Mm-hmm.
And because I grew up Christian, so I always consider myself a Christian.
Mm-hmm.
And then at a certain point, I started to have these doubts like, well, how do I know I'm truly saved? Like, have I, and then, because, they do the thing where I pray the prayer, and I'm like, well, have I prayed that prayer? And then I'm like, well, like, I better pray it now. And I'm like, but am I truly saved now? It's kind of like a blurry thing because, and this is something, like, a lot of people talk about, like, man, that moment I was
We
saved,
actually, yeah, well,
I don't really have that, but I do have a point where I was just thinking to myself, like, this is not from God. Like, I just need to sit here and say, God, Jesus Christ, I ask you into my heart. I want to be a Christian. I don't want to have these doubts anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I want to be saved.
Right,
and then from that point, I just told myself, like, I believe the Bible. I believe I'm saved. I need to stop having these doubts and, like, second guessing God and just, take him at his word, accept salvation from God. And I believe, and that was, I don't know if that wasn't too many years ago, but I would say on the order of 3 or 4 years ago, on the order of that.
you see, I had, for me, just when I was eventually saved, when that was, I was introduced to it prior, and to me actually being saved, and I didn't actually accept that. I don't even know why. It was just sort of like maybe it wasn't grabbing me, you know. It was just sort of like it's not that difficult. It's not.
Right.
But when it grabbed me, it grabbed hold. He grabbed hold of me and just pulled me all the way in. It was like nothing. So I guess it takes the right. The right time
and
for
for
that
myself,
to happen.
I do think it's a more of a maturity level and really kind of understanding what it means.
Yeah, a lot of people tend to think that you can grow up a Christian based on your parents' Christianity. You're saved by your parents,
Right.
sort of thing. That,
And that's kind of where I was, and I had to consciously
seen that a
realize
lot.
and to make that decision in my own life.
a lot of people that grew up in a Christian household, they call themselves Christian, but they don't know what that means. I've seen that. Yeah. So
And just to kind of swiftly finish up that story, another important kind of turning point in my faith, I feel, was going to college and joining InterVarsity Christian Fellowship. Shout out to the InterVarsity peeps out there. But I mean, seriously, that was a excellent growth point in my faith and it comes down to a lot of the things about just like having your faith all from your family and then just having a challenge and a growth, stepping out of your comfort zone. And I hadn't been to Bible studies before, really. I hadn't done youth group, really. So doing something else that was challenging in your faith, and really for myself, it was more about making my own faith, like taking ownership of it and realizing that it needs to impact what you do in your life. You know, it's not just, I'm a Christian, this is my worldview. You know, you actually have to physically, live that out and actually follow, God's commandments and also share your faith and that sort of thing. And also just be more mature about and starting to realize where, I'm not living up to that expectation, and where I'm not, living up to God's will in my life. So certainly going to InterVarsity Bible Studies was like a huge step. And then growing kind of getting involved more in like leading Bible studies and leadership roles. Again, it's like a huge challenge in my faith, and also growing more mature spiritually and also just in general more mature as well. So that's kind of like for me, that's been like the biggest change in the last couple of years for sure in my faith.
That's good.
So that about sums that up.
Oh, that was pretty good.
And I kind of want to get into more the whole InterVarsity thing and church stuff in general. I think we'll try to figure out a good topic and get more into that at some other point as well.
So I think we should probably conclude here soon. We're at probably over an hour now. I sort of wanted to say maybe a glimpse over some of the topics that we have and just sort of name off these are things that we have to look forward to the future, in the future. All right, so off of the top of our list, these are in no specific order at all, but they were just to give an idea, and these were thrown together by us and a few friends. We were going to talk about Star Wars at some point. Not that that's any important topic, but it's fun.
Hey, Star Wars is important too.
Yeah, well, look at his shirt. They can see your shirt, by the way.
I know, that's what I was saying.
Yeah. Books, which I wish I had more time to read, but I don't. So we
The
can talk
Bible
about the
is a
Bible,
book.
though. I can talk about that book.
Exactly.
The good book.
Actually, that's a good kind of segue because I do want to do a Bible translation podcast.
Right,
Talk
right.
about that.
I don't think that's in our list, so that's a good one.
But that's one that I've had in my brain circulating.
Right. I don't know if we fully covered that, and I don't know if we're going to talk. We'll probably talk about it more in a different way. What I'm talking about currently is education and homeschooling.
Sure.
We'll probably get a bit deeper into that if we haven't already, which I
And also maybe separate it out a little more, and definitely get more into that.
We covered a bit on music. We'll probably do more of that. Politics. Politics was on the list.
Politics. Oh boy.
Someone put a note in here.
I hope I don't lose any friends.
Economics, racism.
There's some good ones.
Fascination with racism. Taxes.
There's some good ones.
Capitalism. Yeah, they're just different like subcategories of the same category.
Economics.
Conspiracy theories.
Ooh.
Evil powers that be. I think this was all Stephanie that put this
Well,
in.
that was one we were talking, like, that was one of the ones that kind of kicked it off because we had that discussion about some various things, and I was like, ooh, that might be an interesting.
We need
And
to
also,
talk-
that was another one where I was like, I need more data. I need more facts.
Right.
'Cause
I think
I have a very, I have
that's me on all
preconceived-
of these topics, really.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
what was it? Creationism. We have
Evolution.
the note is old Earth, young Earth, and why different views. People.
There goes more of my friends. I'm losing friends at an amazing rate at this.
Yeah, we did have that discussion on our trip to Disneyland. Actually,
I wonder if Timothy has some things to weigh in on that.
we had a discussion.
He's a geologist. That's
Yeah.
why.
We had a discussion on our way to Disneyland that was about what was that? That was the New Earth.
Right.
And what else? What else did we go into on that?
I don't remember. All that to say,
That's coming soon.
So, and then a couple more personal hobbies. We'll cover that later down the line.
I thought you were going to say personal hygiene. I was like, whoa, how did that sneak on there?
Today we will talk about BO.
Eating healthy. That falls under it, man. I don't
Certainly.
If you eat a lot of garlic.
That's it.
You have a lot
How
of
about some
BO.
Christian dating? That's on the list.
Ooh.
Neither of us have
Christian
experience in
dating.
that field, so
Yeah.
that'll.
That's one that I'm looking forward to doing, for sure.
Oh my
But
gosh.
that's another one where I kind of like to solidify my own ideas.
You see,
and
yeah,
I have some
because
other
I
things
can-
I want to talk about on that too. So
Yeah, because mine. We can talk about our opinions.
Yes.
People that
Yes.
have no experience in this field
Yes,
at all.
I know.
So,
We're
yeah,
like,
that'll
guys,
be
this
fun.
is how it should be.
This is how it should
Never
be.
dated.
We have no clue what we're doing.
Never
but
will.
This is
No,
how
I'm
it
just
should be. It's space exploration. That's the one. There you go. That's for
Yeah.
your friend there. How about that? Marriage, which I think I stuck that one in. No, I didn't. I did stick a few in here that are not in bold. Marriage, which I think that's going to sort of
that's a
fall
good
under.
topic.
That's going to fall under the Christian dating thing because I think they'll
Well,
lead into each other.
yeah, you're right. Those will probably connect in a lot of ways because I mean they're kind of related
I
in a way.
stuck in movies with political messages.
That made me think of that Kevin McCreary. Did you see that Kevin McCreary movie review? There's like this.
No.
It was like this weird. It was like a Christian movie, except instead of Christian, it was what do you call it? Libertarian. Yeah.
Really?
It was really bad.
I didn't. And this falls under the movies category that we're probably going to use Christian movies. And you just mentioned. that a
Oh
moment
yes,
ago.
Christian movies.
Again, Kevin McCreary's influence.
Jobs, the ideal
Jobs.
job or practical job, which will be fun.
That'll be fun.
We work at the same place.
I know, it's amazing.
So, and our goals for the future. That was last on the list.
Ooh, make a podcast. So there's one. Check that off
yeah,
the
that's
list.
off the list.
Goals.
Now, for anyone who may have seen who has seen this or is watching currently, throw in some topic ideas that we can have in the comment section that
Yeah.
we can read, and
Any
we
topic.
will we'll add them to the list. Things you want to hear. A lot of them will be subcategories of existing topics that we've already discussed or will discuss. Other than that, I think we're good. That
That's
was
right.
all of the topics.
Awesome. All right, guys. I hope you enjoyed this podcast. I hope it made a little bit of sense, just a little bit of sense. And
We will be releasing the edited version of this on July 13th. You said
the
So-
Ides of July. Is that a thing? The Ides of July? Oh, okay. It is the Ides of July, July 13th. We've made a new meme.
so. Okay.
So yeah, look forward to
we're
that. Oh, by the way, we should plug our social medias.
Oh yeah. Well, I actually have on the Facebook page right here that you guys are watching this on. I have the not the Facebook, the
Website?
website link on there, which also at the bottom of that page links you to all of our social media links, which we will. Not all of them are up and rolling completely, just because we haven't had the podcast released yet.
Brandon put together the art for that, which was pretty cool.
So yeah, that came out decent. And let me know how you like the website. We're going to be updating that also, along with whatever we're doing with podcasts. It's going to have a separate tab in the top corner, which will lead into different episodes that you can download and listen to separately with your phone, hopefully in sleep mode. That way you don't have to sit here and watch our faces the whole time.
And it will be on
So,
YouTube as well.
Yeah, that'll be uploaded to YouTube. I will have a static thumbnail just for that you guys can listen to on YouTube.
And we have a Twitter account, which is Twooverthinkers, at Twooverthinkers, I
Yeah,
think.
you set that up.
And
So-
I plan on putting some like references and different things on there. Resources, I meant to say, not references. Resources on there about some of the things we talk about, and maybe some random things I'll tweet at.
So this is exciting. This was our first episode
Yes.
that we've been talking about for a long time.
That was a lot of fun though. I enjoyed that. I think we had more to talk about than I even realized. So
Yeah.
I was like,
Oh, this one will be short, like 20 minutes. Here it is, 2 hours later.
No, it's like an hour and a half.
yeah. Anyway, well, that's still an hour and a half is longer than I thought it would be.
I know.
Yeah. So hope you guys enjoy, and we'll see you later.
I'm Brendan.
I'm David.
Bye.